Hey, hello there, everybody. Welcome back to this WTM Deepening the Discussion series of conversations. And today I'm really delighted to be joined by Jeremy Smith. Now, Jeremy has spent the last 6 years working at what you might call the sharp edge of climate action in tourism. He actually co-founded Tourism Declares a Climate Emergency, and he also co-authored the Glasgow Declaration. So he's been deep in the practical side, helping destinations write climate action plans, developing toolkits to guide others, and working with UN Tourism to review and refine the global picture each year. He's had conversations with people right across the sector about what needs to change and how we can move forward on it. Now, Jeremy was the opening keynote speaker at World Travel Market London last November, and his talk carried the title Other Worlds Are Possible, Reimagining Tourism Purpose. So today we're really at that kernel question, or revisiting that idea of what tourism's purpose might be. So Jeremy, you're very, very welcome, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Tina. It's lovely to be back together again.
Yeah, it's great to see you, and great to get a chance to delve a little bit deeper into this whole topic. So we're a few months out from it now, Jeremy. I'm just wondering if you reflect back on WTM in November when you were there, what kind of stayed with you most strongly from that morning, either from the stage or from conversations you had afterwards with people?
It was a I mean, WTM is this vast global event, but it's also where my career in sort of sustainable, responsible tourism started. I started writing a blog for them on responsible tourism back in 2013 and did so for several years and was involved in the responsible tourism events all along, but always sort of backstage or
Yeah.
doing some interviews or maybe occasionally on stage with a panel. I think this was the first time I'd actually stood up and talked to WTM, despite the fact I seem to have spent most of the last few years standing up and talking to people. And it sounds cheesy, but it did feel a bit sort of coming home. It was like, because whereas normally I look out into an audience and I might know someone, I might know two people.
Yeah.
In that small-ish room that we were in, I knew a lot of people, and there were a lot of friends there, and that was a really different experience. And a lot of friends who also I've known and collaborated with or chatted with for years, but who probably had never been sat in my audience. And so there was a sense of both comfort and vulnerability at the same time, I think.
Yeah, of course. And you were the opening keynote. I had in my head you were very much associated with WTM, I must say. So I'm surprised here it was your first time on the stage.
Yeah, I think probably because I'd always been involved in the organising, and
Yeah.
it's hard when you're involved in the organising of who should be speaking to say me. I think I should be speaking.
Very good. True. I hadn't thought of it like that. So look, you did give us a good 25-minute talk. You covered a lot of ground, and still there's more that we could talk about. But for those who didn't get to hear it, I think everything we're going to chat about now will be interesting as well. So as I said, your talk had this idea of imagining other worlds, and it really wasn't abstract or realistic. It was very, very grounded. And I remember you talking a lot about human experiences like care and loss and tiredness, exhaustion, other things like that. Um, what do you think? Well, like we're talking about going deeper here, that whole element, what would you like to open up on? What do you think we most need to be giving more consideration to?
Um, Gosh, that's a big question to start with. That's like every
It's huge.
Well, just because let's start with experience, because that's what you talked about or you mentioned. And yes, all the pieces that connect into it we'll touch on, I'm sure. But for me, in the last however long, recently, let's just say, I think we who work to make tourism more sustainable, who work to make it more responsible, sometimes forget the experience bit. And we treat it as the technical challenge of decarbonizing the product, of ensuring the fair payment for people of the service, of all the various things that we absolutely have to do.
Mm.
But we don't spend any time, as much time as we possibly could, saying, well, this is an incredibly powerful, potentially powerful experience, going away from what you know into a place that is new, interacting with new people, experiencing new things, etc., etc. How might that process be used to further our efforts towards greater sustainability, or our efforts towards greater inclusivity through the power of experience. And I realized that when I've read a lot of climate action plans, and I've written a few climate action plans, and I've written all sorts of things along those lines. But when people commit to what they're going to do as a tour operator, they commit to saying, next year we will make sure that we are causing less emissions. They don't say we're going to add 10% more experiences that focus on what it means to be vulnerable to climate, or how we might interact more closely. And they might say they do it anyway, but I think there's something really vital about us focusing upon our strengths, our core, what we do.
And if you were to put words on those, what are those strengths that you think we could do more with?
That, and this is probably where I differ from a lot of my colleagues and friends, that I think we've got very bound up in this sort of focus on authenticity, on getting to have the real experience of the place as it is, when my real experience of living here, or your real experience of living where you do, isn't the thing that tourists get. That ours is about doing the laundry and recycling and paying the bills and having gentle interactions with people we know around us, or whatever else it might be. But those aren't particularly interesting things to sell people as tourism products. I think there's more potential, rather than in some sort of quest for ersatz authenticity, to sort of say, well, tourism is a creation, it's a fiction, it's a creation of experience, a creation of a vision of the world. And just as you can have a tour that says, go on a walking tour of Dickensian London. Well, Dickensian London doesn't exist. It's 2026.
Yes.
You can join pieces together and enable someone to feel and connect and to experience it. You can do Beatles London and whatever else it might be. Well, we can therefore use that same ability to create narratives, to immerse one another in experiences, to say, would you like to experience what it is like to be part of a thriving, socially just future in a nice, entertaining, non-prescriptive, non-didactic way? Because you can go to the restaurant and have your lunch at the place that is a zero waste restaurant supporting the community, and do this, and there you sit and you enjoy eating your permaculture food. You can connect on the walking tour, you can do these things. And that isn't all of London or anywhere else. It's 3 or 4 pieces joined together. And I think that only really tourism can, someone will tell me there's something else, but isn't that what tourism does? Is it creates other worlds, it creates other ways of being able to imagine a thing. And right now we're in a crisis of many ways, and people can call it poly or meta or whatever form of crisis you want, but we're also in a crisis of the imagination, and a crisis of being unable to imagine anything other than what we are bombarded with every time we doom scroll our way through the evening. But tourism can help us imagine that other worlds are possible by showing us that they currently exist in piecemeal out there already.
Yeah. So really, am I right in what you're advocating? You're kind of challenging tourism to do stuff it just hasn't done already, to get more creative, to get more imaginative, to push the boat out, to challenge itself, to make this interesting, entertaining evening, memorable.
I think we need to say, take climate, that is my main focus. Yes, we need to decarbonize the product. No question asked. Let's just accept that. I mean, that sort of goes without saying. But what about also making climate the subject rather than just the sort of, the ingredient, or decarbonizing it? And, where I live here in southern France, I was driving, there was the biggest wildfire in the country 20 kilometers away in August last year. Now, if you drive through it, it's a barren land, and it's pretty hellish. At the same time, if you were to go onto Tourism Corbiere's website, and Corbière is the region where it happened, rather than sort of going out of shot and saying, well, let's going to photograph you some valleys that are all looking wonderful. They report constantly. They have a newsletter talking about what has been going out, what they've been finding, what's been recovered, how they're doing it. They acknowledge that someone has to tell the story, that has to, whether that is to support the villages who have seen everything they've known as they've walked around the forest and the vineyards destroyed, whether it is to support the tourism industry, whether it is to support others who might go through the similar experience in the future, or whatever it might be, is to say, no. We are a regeneration project now. It's not over. And this is how our regeneration project is going.
Yes. It's almost being forced into doing that. Not suggesting that it was, but that's where they've been left standing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think one of the things I was thinking a bit about recently is the power of tourism and travel to create feelings in us we don't normally have. To feel awe, or to feel wonder, to feel shock even, or stuff like that. That in your day to day you don't come across, and that those kind of big feelings shift perspective. And almost the tourism, like you say, is one of the few sectors that can do that consistently and regularly.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I'm split on this. I mean, I'm 100% agree, and I have a little voice in my head sort of challenging it. The voice in my head that challenges it says, well, if tourism changed us all into being these wonderful people, then why do we keep going on holiday? And because knowing full well the damage we're doing in certain places, surely one long haul trip would be enough. If I knew what I was doing, and I'd come back and go, that was amazing, what an amazing experience. I've now going to think, but the people who care the most about tourism keep on going. And there is a problem inside of that I'm not sure how I get my head around it, but in principle there has to, at the same time, there's a lot of people eulogize, for example, indigenous communities of the world, most of whom who have never left the places where they are. So if tourism is this super fantastic, transformative thing, how does that sit with us eulogizing people who aren't tourists for their wisdom and understanding of the world? That being said, going back to where you came from originally, I 100% agree with you that the experiences I have when a tourist, and there's many different versions of being a tourist. I think I'm a tourist when I go 20 kilometers away and go and walk in a park that I haven't been in before, regardless of whether I stay the night or not. I'm going somewhere new and having an experience out of my everyday. That awe is enormous. That break of the normal rhythm of day is huge. The shifting to having those experiences, sometimes by myself, but sometimes with others, either those I love or those I've never met before. All of them have huge value. And I think that, they often say, isn't it, that you have best conversations with someone when you're walking, standing next to them, both looking in the same direction, rather than when you look face to face and you feel all a bit awkward and aren't too where, that's why you chat really well with your partner when you're driving and you sort of have the big conversations, or when you're going on a long walk. I've had incredible conversations with people who I've shared tours with, who I know I will never see again in 3 days, but we sort of go very rapidly from small talk into total global soul search with someone who is out of my bubble, out of my space, and presented, and then we're both there sharing an experience of awe. And I think you've read the same book on awe that I've read by Keltner, and it is an incredible, there's incredible science on awe showing the impact on these awe-rich experiences, or awe-inspiring experiences, on engendering us to act in more socially empathic ways to our fellow humans.
Yeah, it's such a huge topic, and like you say, fraught with contradictions in itself as well. You mentioned there that you've read a lot of climate action plans. I think you've read a phenomenal amount. Have you read them all? I think it's possible you might have.
If I've read them all, it means no one's published any for a while. So let's assume I definitely haven't read them all, but I've read more than is probably healthy for one human being.
Yeah, and you've written a few, and I'm interested, and I'm just throwing this at you, to write something like the topic you're speaking about into a climate action plan. What does that look and sound like? Have you any idea, or have you seen anywhere that's happened?
I think whenever I've written climate action plans, I'm supporting someone in writing their climate action plan. I
Yes.
think a vast error would be to get a consultant to come in and write your climate action plan for you, because
Yes.
it's, you can't. I can't
Mm.
tell the story of the Corbière or tell
Yeah.
the story of anywhere else, but I can bring my experiences and whatever in, and to help others marshal their thoughts and channel their story through in the structures they are. And that's certainly so. The climate action plan I wrote, the Visit Finland wrote with me, and the climate action plan that the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States wrote with me are completely different, because they come from the way that Finland does things and the way that the Eastern Caribbean does. So there isn't really a prescription of this is how you tell it, other than that's the same prescription as would be when telling any stories. Is make sure it's yours.
Yeah. I'm just wondering about, putting words on some of these kind of aspirations that lend themselves to being actions, as opposed to aspirations. But I think, that's in that whole idea of imagining is the challenge in it. Just one of the things that I certainly walked away and is still with me now from your talk, and a number of people I chatted to afterwards also said it, that you describe tourism as the industry of non-work. And that maybe that's also one of the most important contributions that tourism makes, given, our need for rest and pause and reconnection. And I think that kind of really challenges and maybe even frees us a little bit from our idea of what success is, that kind of our traditional assumptions about productivity, value of tourism success. Can you chat a bit more about the industry of non-work? It was the first time I'd heard that term.
I think it there's a part of it that the specific term that comes from having spent a lot of years as a schoolboy learning Latin and Greek, and scolaire, the Greek for leisure, the word for school, ancient Greek for leisure, neg or otium, the word for business, or sorry, the word for leisure, negotio, not leisure, is business. You frame business as your time away from leisure. There's a prioritization of the time when we're not forced to do the things that are need to earn money to pay our taxes and go to school. Comes, an appreciation that there is intrinsic value in non-work, and there's almost a problem in calling it although it's obviously deliberately sort of jarring. The industry of non-work is it still prioritizes the concept of work, and we live in there's workism. We live in a workist society where you valued through how productive you are. You ask, hello, you go to a party and ask people what they do. I mean, I don't care. What's more interesting is we find common ground through shared jobs rather than common ground through the fact that we both read the same novel in the last, or we both went to the same concert, or we enjoy cooking, or things which are actually interesting to talk about. But because of that overarching framing, we frame everything through productivity goals, and then we look at tourism is the 10% of GDP and 1 in 10 jobs. But the more you just get into that endless framing, the more everything then has to be translated into a monetary value, the sort of natural capital approach to giving value to forests and to coral reefs, as if you can somehow add up or subtract and say this forest is worth more than that forest. According to what? I mean, and you don't come out of, it's like going to go for a walk in a forest and come out and go, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. I mean, it doesn't make sense. It's just, it's not a way of connecting. And we still see, then we see rest and restoration and recuperation as being subsets of work. The idea is that you rest in order to get back to work. And I think that, and that's problematic, because that's us as machine rather than us as having value and the purpose of life beyond work. And I really want to try to find ways of, while acutely conscious that there's an enormous risk of it becoming very privileged because work is the society. But it's like if we can't challenge the construct of a society, then it becomes very difficult. And we're about to go through, we're entering into a world where work is going to be reinvented like we have never imagined, depending upon what level of AI takes over, what scale AGI comes in at or doesn't ever come in at or whatever. But we're going to need to reevaluate. And as a writer, primarily, AI, what it mostly does is write. And it does lots of other things as well. But and I see it writing badly, and it's terrifying because we're all sat now. The word slop has suddenly taken a whole new set of meanings in the last 12 months, and we all turn on whichever social business focused social media site we spend our time on and read AI slop, telling each other how wonderful we are, and sort of rather than getting out into nature or going and being in a village or a town or connecting to people. And I think that every effort we ever make to make virtual tourism fails because in the end no one wants to stick an AI headset on and go to go to the Alhambra. They want to go to the Alhambra. And I think that's going to become really valuable in a world where we increasingly, when they won't know if it's me talking to you or me talking to AI you or AI you talking to AI me, they're still gonna know what it feels like to taste really fresh Spanish tomatoes on pan con tomatoes or to feel the sunset and the Kruger Park or whatever it is, because those aren't going to be AI'd away. And I think that the tourism experience reconnects us to what's real.
Absolutely. And I love the way that kind of naturally in your train of thought there that pairing or juxtaposition of this AI world and tourism, and that almost with the rise of AI, tourism is really has the opportunity to come into its own and define this particular purpose, which is keeping us in the real world. Real places, real people, real interactions, and that space that isn't, like you say, we don't know if we're in a digital world sometimes or not. You don't know who you're speaking to or what they're saying. I think tourism has a real emerging purpose there that might actually be named in the common language of everyday travel, like that's what it's doing for us.
I think so. I mean, I think I probably went on a bit of a AI tangent last year when I saw parallels between AI and tourism in that they both create versions of the world, that they both, et cetera, et cetera. But as I the more time I've spent with AI, the more I'm uncomfortable with it rather than comfortable with it, shall I say, and the more I feel a need to reclaim my own space and time. And I think there is something of that in it, isn't it? AI makes everything easy and simple for us. And that's the sell, isn't it? That you can just wee and suddenly the answer's there, regardless whether the answer's true or not. But there it happens to be. And it's very alluring to be able to suddenly remove those frictions. And yet sometimes, anyone who's had much experience of tourism knows that sometimes it's the frictions, it's the difficult bits, the bits that sort of take you away, that turn it into an experience. The fact that you actually do have to walk for 7 hours to get to the top of the mountain. Of course, you could get someone to give you a lift up there, but it's the walking up the top. You may spend 20 minutes looking at the view. It's the 7-hour trek that gets you there.
Yeah. The conversation in your talk keeps coming back to that idea of the human feeling, the human experience, and that word experience that you started out with. And I thought another thing from your talk that stood out is, I know you're a climate action expert. You've been one of the leading people on that, as I said in the introduction, driving new initiatives and things like that on a global scale. But you very much came beyond the normal conversation on climate action into the experience of dealing with climate action and what it feels like for the people who work in it, who have to live with it, who suffer the consequences. But and I guess that's you as well, Jeremy, having been really deeply involved in this for 6, 7, 8 years and longer. Talk a bit more about that, the emotional load of the climate action work.
I mean, it loops back and then resonates with what we said at the beginning when we talked about the experience. But I know from a lot of the work I've done in the climate action sort of planning, talking, is I often find myself talking with people, often at destinations. I do a lot of work with destinations who their career path up until recently has been like tourism, got into tourism, love the place I live, have worked to promote the place I live or to sell tours or to do whatever it might be. And then along came a bunch of busybodies like me saying, actually, climate, sustainability, whatever it is. And after a while, people go, I suppose we better do something about it. And obviously, I'm massively simplifying it. But people suddenly find themselves with this massively additional piece of workload, which they weren't prepared for. And I wasn't prepared for it. I went to university to read English, but have spent the last 25 years working in environment and then sustainable tourism. But it didn't come from a science background at all, and it's taken me a long time. And I know when I talk to people who are suddenly being set the challenge of measuring the carbon footprint of tourism in their town or village or hotel, and they're going, how? Where do I start? Why? And what am I going to? What is going to benefit of this? And when they do it, they come up with a number, and they go, well, that wasn't very large, and because relatively large was the enormous number of the airline bringing in all the people, or the car hire, or the multinational cruise companies, or whatever it might be, all of whom don't seem to be doing radically progressive work on decarbonizing the 80% or whatever it is that they're all responsible for. But all these good, decent people doing decent tourism are suddenly having this vast extra workload and wondering why on earth. And then we wonder why there's resistance towards it when it is so not what they came in there to do. So there's that. Then you add an additional layer, which is, what does it feel like if you're the people of a place, Valencia, the Cordillera I am, and everywhere else that has just suffered a vast flood, a huge wildfire, whatever, a heat wave that's killed many, many, many people, you name it, whatever, a hurricane, the endless things. And your job is to put on a sunny face and select the photographs of the sunsets and the sunrises. And yet places you know and love have just been wiped out forever, and families and friends and whatever else it might be. And tourism, because of the nature of tourism, we like to go on holiday often to the remote beach or the valley or the mountain or the glacier, is often right at the place where this sort of stuff is happening. And that means, and yet we're not prepared. We're not skilled. We're not skilled in the technical stuff of measuring, so on. And we're also not skilled in in trauma counseling, which is kind of what people need after that sort of stuff. And when I ask people about it, they're like, no, nothing, no preparation, no knowledge, no experience, none of that. And what I wonder is if we shifted our focus away from, or not shift, if we continued doing what we need to do to decarbonize the product, but we realized that the experiential thing is why people got into tourism for a business, the experience of climate change disaster, whether it's just it getting a bit hotter or it getting more unsettled or localized specific events, is, I think it's a fairly safe bet to say, in a bad place and going to continue to get worse. And so more and more and more and more of us are going to have either direct experience or one removed experience because our friend or family member or favorite colleague who we talked to in the tour operator was there all the time. And and however much we measured our emissions isn't going to prepare us for that. But maybe if tourism could work how it is to help people have the difficult conversations, share experiences of love and loss and renewal through visiting places, seeing what is happening, discovering that the Republican voter and the Democrat voter and the young person and the old person and the the hippie and the business person all stand in awe when they see that experience and all feel a moment of desire to help and to feel vulnerable, then maybe we play a more important role than working out that the emissions of Dublin are less than the emissions of Belfast.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you're talking about, I mean, I feel we're very stuck in counting the numbers related to climate action internationally, not anybody in particular. But like you say, when you come into this space and you suddenly have this responsibility as part of your brief, even doing the research and self-education to understand what you need to do is doom scrolling, which you mentioned earlier. It's depressing in its very essence, and I think you spoke about that at the time. Do climate action plans need to include that kind of human support function that you're talking about, dealing with trauma and anxiety and nervousness and that kind of stuff that A, the leaders are dealing with, B, the visitors, C, the hosts?
Yeah, you actually, when you just said it in the question, really, but I completely agree. I think that a young person is tasked with writing the climate action plan and said, we're going to give you enough time to do it. They're then going to go on a doom scroll sort of, vortex into the realities of climate change. Very few people come out of getting much, much, much more knowledgeable on the reality of climate change really upbeat.
That's for sure.
It really wasn't as big a problem as I thought it was. Is very rarely where they come out the other side. It's like, oh God, and generally, oh God, and now I can't think about anything else. And I think we absolutely need to work out how we provide the care, the support, and that could ramp through from inside of companies, inside of destinations, towards guests as product, if you want to call it product, so that people can, one of the things I was going to talk about in my talk and then didn't was the rise of climate cafes. A cafe is not a million miles away from a tourism experience. It's an experience of coming into a place and sitting and gathering and eating some food. There was a climate cafe movement across the world. Like many good climate things, it started in Scotland. And most of them are occasional rather than permanent. But in essence, it's on the last Friday of the month, come to the cafe and find a safe space where we can all talk about our fears and about climate. And maybe we'll bring someone along and we'll have a chat. Now, I think that's a really necessary space to teach us, to share together, not to teach us, to learn how to move forward into the world to come, to share our fears, to be able to say, I'm really, really scared right now, rather than just, oh, it's fine. Do you see what else is on telly? It's like, no, but we have to be able to say that and dig into some of the difficult stuff without being labeled sort of Cassandras, and then be able to say, okay, now what? And whatever now what is another matter. But I think, if tourism can provide that, and it's that rest, again, it connects to what you said earlier, provide that space for people to feel safe, feel calm, feel away from pressure, deal with something big.
Yeah, the word reprieve is coming to mind there as you were describing that. Absolutely. I think that task you set yourself in the talk about reimagining tourism's purpose in the sustainable tourism frame. It's interesting. I mean, it's beyond interesting to me how much it became about people and emotions and sensations and feeling. It's so not what you're expecting when we use the word climate change, climate action in particular. So I think you're certainly inspiring that idea of really reimagining. Like I'd love to see the climate action plans that have those actions in them. And as you explain, as you talk through your thoughts there, and that it seems self-evident that they should be in there, So hopefully that's sparked something for those who've had the chance to listen to you as well. I'm going to leave you. I opened with a big question. I'm going to leave you with a big question as well, which is because it's such a big topic anyway. If you were to give everyone who's listening just like one question or one thought or one word that would kind of help them move forward a little bit with these ideas, what would it be? Deep breath.
Okay. First of all, I'd say
you're not limited to just one, but you know what I mean. It's just a thought.
So first of all, I'd say don't worry too much about. I mean, this is really hard, but don't rush to move forward.
Yeah.
I know you did move forward, but I'm afraid actually we need to sit with this stuff for a while, and it's okay. And don't chase solutions, don't chase answers, don't rush to the next page, to the template, to the checklist. This is huge stuff, and it deserves and needs some time to contemplate and to sit and to think about it. And I think it's for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, we're sitting here in wet, cold Januaries. But wet, cold Januaries are an essential part of the year.
Yeah.
And we like to talk about spring and summer and and everyone talks about regeneration. Everyone thinks of spring and summer and it's all regenerate. It's all flourish. But it flourishes because of what happens now, because of the slow, it happens because of the compost, because of the dying leaves molding into the ground. We need to let things go. We need to stop and not worry about where we would go next. And so I'd say, I'm afraid, be willing to take the time to sit and not come up with any answers. Do a lot of listening, do a lot of talking. And then I suppose the second thing I'd say is I'm doing a lot of listening about it. And anyone wants to have a chat working in tourism, ping me an email. I would happily sit and hear where someone else's thoughts are taking them, and we'll happily share thoughts on it as well, because I think that's, yes, we need to stop and sit and be alone in it. But also when we stop and sit and be alone in our thoughts, we tend to spiral. And I think we do need to be able to, as we have here today, have a chance to chat and bounce ideas off each other rather than just.
That is a very generous offer, Jeremy. If people do want to contact you, how do they do that?
They can find me at my website, which is jmcsmith.com. It's Jeremy Smith, and they'll find me.
Just Google you, they'll find you. So via the website. I think that's such deep parting wisdom, in the sense I'm totally taken from that. You're mirroring the natural order of things. That there's a period where everything goes dark and you just sit, and that's going to feed whatever emerges in the spring and the summer. It's really, really good advice, and it's a little countercultural, would you say, in the whole climate action frenzy to measure our carbon footprints?
But I think there was a screen, or called a slide, in my talk that which has been the line that's stuck with me since I read it last year, from a Nigerian philosopher called Bayo Akomolafe, and he said the time is very urgent. We need to slow down, and for me that is everything. It is, because I see people go, oh, it's so urgent. What can we do? Quick, 5,000 more things by Tuesday. It's like, but we, along with part of the whole work productivity thing, fueled now by AI, is the idea that if we just keep doing it faster, we'll get there, but not if we're going in the wrong direction.
Not if you're going in the wrong direction. Jeremy, I'm going to say thank you very much for deepening the discussion with me today. I think that wise quote is a good one to leave with. I hope I'm going to say it correctly. The times are urgent and we need to slow down.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, for the conversation.
Likewise, Tina. Thank you so much.